Happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone. Welcome to another fabulous edition of Chamber Chat presented by Bose, McKinney, and Evans. My name's Brad Kloffenstein. I am your host for this show. Right now, let me introduce Alan Becker from Bose, McKinney, and Evans to introduce our guest.
Thank you, Brad. I hesitate to say it that I have been around Indianapolis long enough to see the development of us as sort of a sports city from the days when it was mostly holes in the ground downtown. But Bill Benner, our guest today, has been selected into the U.S. Basketball Writers Association 2021 Hall of Fame class. He's written for the Indianapolis Star and the Indianapolis Business Journal, and he had an afternoon radio sports talk show. He's worked for the Horizon League and Spacer Sports and Entertainment, and he reports on sports-related stories for Inside Indiana Business. He was born and raised in Indiana, and he knows all there is to know about Indiana sports, I'm told. And he also has a unique perspective on the ability of Indianapolis and Central Indiana to pull off the entire NCAA basketball tournament. So with that said, I will turn it back to you, Brad, and you can start our program.
Thank you very much, Alan. So, Bill, welcome. Before we get started, I don't know if you remember this. You and I were coworkers about 23 years ago for this long. You and Tim had the afternoon show on WNDE, and I was a young sales professional with a cubicle outside of that studio, and I burned out after about 9 months.
That was a 6161 Fall Creek Road. I had a very enjoyable run there with my co-host Tim Bragg on the Sports Daily, and they were gracious enough to allow me to work it because I was still a full-time sports writer at the time for the Star. So they allowed me to be in the studio when I could, to be on the phone from whatever location I might have been at the time. But it was great. The fun thing about that was if I ticked somebody off in the paper that morning, they could call and directly bitch at me in the afternoon. So it was great.
How long did you guys have that show?
I think we went from 94 till 2001 when I left the Star.
Okay. So I knew it was fun. And yeah, every once in a while, when you guys were at commercial break, we would briefly talk sports of the day or sales problems.
Well, and just real quickly, our board operator at the time was John Michael Vincent, JMV, who now does the ride 1070 on the Fan. So it's been nice to see his career development.
That guy's done fairly well for himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, board ops don't usually go that route.
That's right.
So anyhow, let's get to the business at hand. Indianapolis has done well for themselves this year, from being, well, supposedly we're just going to have the Final Four, and all of a sudden we have the entire tournament throughout Central Indiana. How did this get pulled off? Was that all you?
Well, I wish. No, I've kind of moved on from that inner workings role, although I was in the second part of my career with the Sports Corporation, with the Visit Indy, even with the Horizon League. I was involved in many successful, I might add, bids to bring various sporting events here, including the Super Bowl and the Big Ten tournaments and that sort of thing. But in this particular case, I have to credit Ryan Vaughn at the Sports Corporation. Rick Fuson, who's the chairman of the Sports Corporation, was my boss at Pacers Sports Entertainment. They came forward with the concept after the NBA season of having a bubble. And the bubble would be, they really threw it out to all of college basketball. If you need to come here for your conference tournament, if you need to come here to play games, we can provide you a controlled environment at the Indiana Convention Center with adjacent connected hotels. And so it really started with that. And then I think the NCAA had also been watching the bubble that the NBA executed, along with what hockey did up in Canada. And as COVID evolved, they realized that this was not, they needed to have the tournament. I mean, it's such a financial windfall for all of the NCAA conferences, teams, athletic departments, they couldn't go another year without having the tournament. So, but they also had to look at the realities of COVID, the logistics that were involved, and quickly determined that they needed to do it in one site. And so those two kind of things merged and wed, and it was quickly, Indianapolis was already awarded the 2021 Final Four, and it quickly became apparent that if they were going to do it in one place, where better than to do it in Indianapolis.
So what is your role now with the tournament? So are you just there covering it? Are you participating? Or are you?
I'm a volunteer. 2 weeks ago, my wife and I went downtown and we did part of the downtown cleanup. We scraped posters and stuff off the signs, and so I'm a volunteer. Last night I had laundry duty at the convention center. Tomorrow morning, I also at 8 o'clock, I have laundry duty at the convention center. But then my most significant role, they have what's called Indie Advocates. We have a media hub that will be established. In fact, it's going to be established this afternoon at the Arts Garden. And I will be in the role of Indie Advocate Lead and joining a number of others and staffing that place. And as the media comes, that's where they'll come to get their credentials. But if they need story ideas, if they need references about the arts project that's going on in addition to the Final Four, or basketball history, any of those kinds of things, I will be among others who will be active in that role. I also have a role as kind of the liaison, because I'm an old guy who's been around Indiana forever, that I will work, if needed, with CBS and Turner to help them develop any Indiana storylines that they might not already be aware of. Certainly the storied history of the Coliseum, Hinkle Fieldhouse, everything we've done in basketball over many, many, many years. If they need anything along those lines in terms of who to talk to, what might this be a good idea, I'm there to help them on an as-call basis.
Okay, so now you mentioned all the venues. I think Butler hosted like 80 years ago.
1940.
Okay, so yeah, it has been 80 years ago. Coliseum's probably never hosted. I doubt that Mackey or Assembly Hall have.
Yes, Assembly Hall in 1981, when Indiana played there on their way to the national championship. And then Purdue, Mackey Arena, it was, I believe, in the late 70s, they hosted first and second rounds.
Okay, so I was a little surprised that they didn't try to bring in like University of Indianapolis or Marian University in lieu of going to West Lafayette or particularly Bloomington, just because of the traffic problems.
Well, I think, again, the UIndy perhaps would have been an alternative site, but I think they were looking to put these teams in college environments as much as possible. And, certainly, I think Michigan State is going to play there in Mackey on Friday night or Thursday night. So, but I think that was a desire to have this as much a college environment, and not to discount Marian or UIndy, but to kind of put them in big time college environments. But that's merely speculation on my part. I was not involved in the conversation.
Yeah, well, I find it curious you mentioned Michigan State. I think that 5 of the 9 Big Ten teams play their first game at Mackey.
Yeah. So that'll be, somewhat of a little bit of advantage, but you still got to go out and make shots.
Yeah,
and play defense.
Yeah,
those little things that actually win games.
Oh, not everybody needs defense to win games. So no, I also thought it was somewhat genius and a great trial run for the Final Four. The Big Ten moving their tournament over to Lucas Oil Stadium.
Well, that was a result of the COVID issues in Chicago. Chicago being having much more difficulty, certainly with public access. And Chicago, I have to be honest, and I've been to Chicago. Chicago's a wonderful city. It's the second city, but the logistics of Chicago simply do not compare to the logistics of Indianapolis. You got the United Center, which is, probably 5 miles west of the Loop. You have everything else downtown. Getting back and forth, it just, even in the best of times, even in the best non-COVID times, Chicago, but it's not Indy when it comes to tournament logistics. That's why the Big Ten, and again, I referenced being part of a bid for that framework when we got five in a row Big Ten men's basketball tournaments. And it's because while the Big Ten might be headquartered in Chicago, all of its fans, they love coming to Indy because it's just so damn easy and practical. I have to tell you, my wife and I went to the semifinal games at Lucas Oil last Saturday. It was great to see people downtown again. There was a big volleyball tournament going on, and it really had a great buzz finally. And I think that will extend now as we get into March Madness and we host the NCAA.
So you've been around for
Ever.
Well, a while. I was going to say all of the Final Fours that we've had in Indianapolis, the Pan Am Games, a Super Bowl, every Indy 500 we've had. Given this structure with a bubble and 68 teams coming to Central Indiana, where does this compare with all of those other events, other Final Fours, the Super Bowl, the Indy 500? Is this the biggest event that we've had?
Yeah, well, this is certainly the biggest event with the most challenges. Now the Pan Am Games, you had 30,000 volunteers, you had 10 or 12,000 athletes coming from around the world, lots of spread out venues all the way from Michigan City to Camp Atterbury and various locations. But we also had a ready to go athletes village at Fort Harrison. And we had, although it was a relatively short period of time, you still had a couple of years to put everything into place. This thing, again, really came to fruition in November, was not announced until January. And so it has enormous logistical challenges, brought in by the overriding aspect of the virus. The Super Bowl, there was a manual. I mean, and with Final Fours, there's been a manual. Now, Indianapolis did such a great job hosting the Super Bowl that they forced the NFL to rewrite the manual after that. And that's been somewhat the case with the Final Fours. Every time we've had a Final Four, this will be, I think, the 8th. Indianapolis has continued to up the bar. But there's no manual for this. It's by the seat of your pants largely. There have already been some challenges. I'm sure as the tournament unfolds, there will be even more challenges. Having athletes and coaches and all the support personnel inside the bubble, having them tested on a daily basis. I mean, this is an enormous undertaking. But I'm confident that Indianapolis will pull it off, and it's a totally unique moment, not only in Indianapolis' sports history, but in sports history in general. And I relish the opportunity that we get to do this, but I also applaud everybody from Dan Gavitt at the NCAA, through the local organizing committee, through Ryan Vaughn at the Sports Corp, everybody involved, all the way down to those of us who are cleaning laundry. This is an enormous team undertaking.
So think back, you are a to-be Hall of Famer. So when's your induction ceremony?
It's supposed to we're going to have a virtual ceremony sometime during the Final Four.
Okay.
And then we hope to have a in-person induction ceremony probably at next year's Final Four in New Orleans, because last year's class didn't get inducted either because of COVID.
That's true. So, well, congratulations to
Thank you
on that. It is well deserved.
Thank you.
So think back on your career of all those events that we've mentioned, or maybe some that we haven't mentioned. What has been your favorite, and are there any moments that stand out?
Well, I get asked that question a lot, and there is no one favorite because there have been so many incredible moments that I was fortunate to witness. I covered the Dream Team in Barcelona, but even covering the Dream Team in Barcelona, and you don't have time for me to go into it all, but I was also fascinated because I'd been covering international basketball for since '87 in the Pan Am Games. There was an incredible backstory with Lithuania and the unified team, the old Soviet Union team. They ended up playing for the bronze medal, and there was a great political backstory to that. I saw Damon Bailey score with 41,000 people in the Hoosier Dome. I mean, how do you even imagine that in Indiana high school basketball that you would have 41,000 people show up for a state championship game? Jim Nance and everybody agrees that in 2010, in that fraction of a moment when the ball was in the air off the hands of Gordon Hayward, that was maybe the greatest indecisive moment in NCAA basketball history. And had that shot gone in, it would have been the all-timer, no question about it. And everybody agrees on that. So that was another truly magical moment to witness. Being downtown during that time when we got blessed by the weather, leading up to the Super Bowl, that was a very special moment. I was in Philadelphia in '76 watching the Hoosiers complete their unbeaten season. That was a pretty special moment. I covered the very first game when Market Square Arena opened. I was the beat writer for the Pacers at the time back in 1974. And little did we know then what a pivotal moment that was for Indianapolis and its history, the development of downtown and everything that happened subsequent to the construction of Market Square Arena and what that meant for the city. I actually missed the Colts arrival because I was in Seattle covering a Final Four, but that's another, how did that happen? Well, one of the reasons, serendipity, we just happened to have Colts blue seats in the Hoosier Dome when Bob Irsay was walked in by Bill Hudnut when he went, "You guys built this place for me and my team." So when the NCAA announced its relocation, that was another huge moment for Indianapolis. And so the list goes on and on. We only have a half hour, but I tell people I was so blessed, Brad, because my sports writing career began in 1968, and really through my time with the Business Journal after I left the Star, really went 45 years. And during that 45 years, Indianapolis used sports as an economic development tool that is unparalleled in American civic history. It's just, and Jim Morris and Ted Boehm and all the people who had that vision to form a sports corporation, the first of its kind in the country, that vision and everything that took place to implement it, the investment in infrastructure from Market Square Arena to the field house, from the Dome to Lucas Oil, to the amateur sports facilities, the natatorium. When you look back on it, how they dreamed it and how it came about is just off the charts.
I remember when the Hoosier Dome was built, and if you look, Indianapolis and San Antonio both speculated on building dome stadiums, and it paid off for one. And that's a big commitment.
Well, and I would say this, Brad, San Antonio, of course, they have the Riverwalk and they have weather. They have very nice weather. But San Antonio, they've done well for themselves. I always compared Indianapolis to Louisville. We were both one event towns. And their main arena was Freedom Hall. We didn't have our main arena was the Fairgrounds Coliseum. But again, our Dick Lugar and Jim Morris and the decision to build Market Square Arena down, it was originally supposed to be built out by Lafayette Square. the decision to build that arena downtown, and then everything that happened subsequent to that, enabled Indianapolis to become the Indianapolis we know today that's hosting the entirety of March Madness. Louisville didn't figure it out for a long time. They finally built the Yum Center downtown. They got a nice downtown ballpark like Indianapolis had Victory Field. And so Louisville, the light eventually went on, but we blew, it was Linda Ronstadt blew by you. We just dusted it. And I remember when I was working for the Sports Corp and Visit Indy, we would have other cities come to, other civic leadership would come to Indy and go, how did you guys do this? I mean, what's the blueprint? And the blueprint was vision, investment, people, volunteers. It's a culture that now is part of our city, and I love it for it.
Well, and I agree. 40 years ago, Indianapolis was kind of on par with Louisville. We were a smaller, less prominent city than Cincinnati. So I'm thinking of other cities in our region.
Yeah.
And we've blown past Louisville and are on par, if not a little bit above Cincinnati now.
Well, Cincinnati always had, they had the Reds. They lost their NBA team, the Royals, but they had the Reds and they had the Bengals, and Cincinnati is a nice place. But again, the infrastructure and how it works for us, the convention center and the connectivity of downtown. It's again, there are very few places like that. You take the poll of fans, and I've heard this many, if we had to have the Final Four in one place, well, it would be 80% Indianapolis, and it would probably be 10% New Orleans and 10% San Antonio. But Indianapolis, again, is just on a different level.
Oh, I agree. Let me open it up now. We've got some people in the gallery. Do we have questions for Bill while he's here from those assembled? I see none, so I will go back. I'll ask.
I'll always ask.
Actually, okay,
Yeah,
Bill Smythe always wants to ask questions.
You were announced by Alan as a lifelong Hoosier. Where'd you go to high school?
I went to Center Grove back when it was a little farm school, and it's not a little farm school anymore. They have amazing athletic facilities down there, and they've had great success. They've become a football power. I played for the 66 and 67 Trojans.
No, I did
so
not know that.
I'd like to think that the success they're having today was built on my shoulders.
Aren't you a Fishers resident now?
We live in Massachusetts, and we've been out here since 1987, back when the only thing that there was at 96 and 69 was an Amoco station. It's changed. It's changed a little bit.
Well, I live on Ironwood over here at 116th and Hoosier, and I can assure you, since I built, it's been, we had 20-some thousand people.
Yeah. No, we love it out here. I was a boater, and so we used to pull the boat out here forever. And I had a dock, and when the kids got old enough, we had to start making permanent school decisions. We decided we wanted to be in the Hamilton Southeastern District, so we built out here again a long time ago.
So thank you, Bill. Want to take a moment to again thank our sponsor, Bose McKinney and Evans, attorney at law. Thank you for sponsoring Chamber Chat, presented by the Greater Lawrence Chamber of Commerce. So, Bill, you are almost a Lawrence resident. I asked all of our guests, what is your favorite thing about Lawrence?
Fort Harrison State Park. What a gem that place is. And the golf course, although the golf course beat the crap out of me every time I play it, but Fort Harrison State Park is such a gem. It's so beautiful over there, so peaceful, accessible, and to think that we have that in an otherwise urban environment is an incredible jewel for our area.
I would agree. My yard backs up to the state park, and I love it. So, all right. So you are an IU alum, correct?
Yes, sir.
Who's going to be their next coach? And if you were AD, who would you hire?
Well, if he would come here, which I don't think he will, it would be Brad Stevens, obviously. I mean, the guys, when I was at the Horizon League, I got to see him up close and personal on a number of occasions. The guy's a genius. He's a wonderful, wonderful person, and he would do a hell of a job. But short of Brad Stevens, and I don't think he'll leave the Celtics, I think Dane Fife, who was at Indiana Purdue Fort Wayne as a head coach, now assistant with Izzo at Michigan State. I think he'd be a good choice. I don't think they're going to get Drew. I don't think they're going to get Beard from Texas Tech. I've heard Keith Smart's name out there. I think Keith is currently in the NBA as an assistant with maybe the Knicks. But Keith, you know, I know Keith personally. He's a wonderful guy. Whether you need an Indiana guy, I think that's the first question you have to determine.
Apparently Doyle doesn't share your opinion on that, okay?
I saw that. And,
Okay.
yeah. And as I recall very well, columnists are entitled to have their opinions even if they're wrong.
Even when they're freaking wrong.
So now we talked about the ascension of Indianapolis. Now we're talking about college basketball. Has there been any other program to do what Butler has done as far as, I mean, they were solidly a mid-major, if not a low mid-major, and now they're playing at the peak of the college basketball world. Obviously, realignment left some people out and made winners out of others, but I don't think anybody won more than Butler did.
You know, Gonzaga would be a good comparison. San Diego State has a very healthy, robust program. I think they might even make a run in the Final Four. We saw the recent example of Loyola Chicago reach the Final Four in 18 with Porter Moser as their coach, another possible candidate for the IU job, although I also hear Minnesota's interested in him. But, you know, you get the right people in the place. And for Butler, it started with, it really started with Barry, but, you know, Thad Matta and they've had a string of really, really good coaches. And then their decision, I was working for the Horizon League when they bailed on our league. I understand they did what they had to do for them. The league that they really kind of were not very kind to was the A10, because they went to the A10 for 1 year, and then as realignment continued, then they went on to the Big East. But I applaud Butler for what they've done, and the field house is phenomenal. And Barry Collier has done a hell of a job as the AD there, and they have elevated that program. I hope. I know LaVal Jordan as a person. He's a wonderful guy. I hope he can sustain that success. They got a very young team. They had COVID and injury issues this year, but I think they can be pretty good next year.
I concur. So, Bill, I promised you that I'd have you out by 2 o'clock, and we're at 1:59. So thank you all for joining us with Chamber Chat, presented by Bose, McKinney & Evans, Attorney at Laws. Hall of Famer Bill Benner, thank you very much for joining us. And for everybody who tuned in, thank you for being here. Again, I will have this up online here by the end of the week. So tell your friends, and I'll make sure everybody has the link. And we'll see you 2 weeks and 2 days, April 2nd. We're doing a special Chamber Chat. It's going to be Friday afternoon at Triton Brewery. This is a live and in person with John Ketzenberger. We're going to be talking to him about the Nature Conservancy and all they're doing and having a few pints. So feel free to join us. So everybody have a great week, and we'll see you all soon. Bill, thanks for volunteering. Enjoy yourself this weekend.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks.